The sun had barely risen over the colony of Theron 5, yet the heat already pressed down on the small human settlement. Dust swirled around the makeshift buildings, and the faint hum of machinery blended with the distant cries of children playing near the water towers. Life on this remote planet was harsh. Supplies were limited, and every day brought the constant threat of the Vryn, the alien invaders who had been attacking human colonies across the sector for years. Captain Ethan Rain stood at the edge of the settlement, watching the horizon with a practiced eye. His uniform was dusty, his boots scuffed, and his jaw set in that determined line people knew well. Ethan was a soldier, yes, but he was also a protector, a man who had risked everything to save strangers, knowing the odds were often stacked against him. He adjusted the strap of his laser rifle across his shoulder and took a deep breath. Today would be no different. A sudden flash in the distance caught his attention, a shimmer of blue and gold against the barren landscape. He squinted. It wasn't natural. The Vryn ships were descending faster than usual. Panic surged through the colony as alarms began to ring. Children screamed and adults ran in every direction, grabbing supplies, trying to gather families, trying to survive. Ethan moved without hesitation. "Get inside!" he shouted to anyone nearby. His voice carried authority but also reassurance. No one could ignore him when he spoke. In an instant, he was at the center of the chaos, coordinating humans who were terrified but still willing to listen. Then came the fire. A Vryn strike had hit the heart of the settlement. Flames roared up from the storage warehouse, feeding on fuel and supplies. Thick black smoke twisted into the sky. From the edge of the smoke, a small figure emerged. A child, barely 8 years old, her clothes singed and face streaked with tears. Her name was Lyra, a curious and brave girl who had been wandering too far from her parents. Now she was trapped, and the fire grew closer with every second. Ethan's heart clenched. Without thinking twice, he sprinted toward the inferno. Heat slapped him across the face, but he did not slow down. The roar of the flames was deafening, but he ignored it. His eyes locked on Lyra. The child's small hands reached out toward him as he approached, and in that instant, nothing else mattered. The fire was alive, hungry, moving faster than it should. Ethan could feel the searing heat against his skin through his uniform. Smoke burned his throat, but he refused to stop. He grabbed Lyra just as a beam above them groaned and began to fall. With sheer strength and instinct, he pushed her to the side, taking the brunt of the falling debris himself. Pain shot through his shoulder, but he ignored it. There was only one priority: keep the child alive. Behind him, he could see the Vryn scouts landing. Their elongated limbs and armored carapace reflected the sunlight as they emerged from their sleek ships. Their eyes were cold, calculating. These were not mindless beasts. They were hunters, and they had chosen this settlement as prey. Ethan carried Lyra to a nearby shelter, using a fallen metal panel to shield them from the worst of the flames. Inside, the walls shook and the heat was suffocating. Lyra's small body trembled, her sobs choking her words. Ethan held her tight, whispering, "It's okay. You're safe now. I've got you." Somewhere high above the planet, a figure watched. She was massive, regal, and unlike anything human imagination could create. Queen Elara, the leader of the Vryn hive, observed the scene with interest. Her eyes, glowing faintly with intelligence, never left the human who had risked his life for a child. Most humans ran, screamed, or tried to fight. But this one had stood in the fire, protecting someone weaker, someone defenseless. Elara's curiosity was piqued. There was something rare in this species, something that made them unpredictable, dangerous in a way her hive had not yet encountered. And this human, he was not afraid. He was different. Back on the ground, Ethan's relief was short-lived. The shelter shook violently as the building above collapsed in a cascade of fire and metal. He covered Lyra with his own body, shielding her from the worst of it. She buried her face against his chest, crying but alive. The fire had not claimed her, not while he stood there. Ethan's mind raced. The settlement was under siege. The survivors needed guidance, strategy, and protection. But more pressing was a simple truth. The child in his arms had no one else. Her parents were missing, probably trapped elsewhere or worse. For now, he had to keep moving. He had to lead, protect, and survive. He peeked out from the shelter. Vryn drones scuttled across the ruins, their mechanical limbs clicking like the footsteps of predators. Human defenses were limited: a few old turrets, some improvised barricades, and a handful of trained soldiers who were already stretched to the breaking point. Ethan knew their odds were slim, yet he did not hesitate. He rallied the nearest humans, organizing them into defensive positions. He distributed energy rifles, coordinated fire, and even guided the children and elders to safer zones. His commands were precise, his calmness infectious. Fear still lingered, but the humans followed him. They trusted him. Hours passed in a haze of smoke, fire, and battle. The humans fought with courage, but the Vryn were relentless. And yet each time a human faltered, Ethan was there, pulling them back, encouraging them, inspiring them. He moved through the battlefield like a force of nature, always returning to the small moments, helping a child climb out of rubble, dragging a wounded soldier to safety, shielding civilians from the alien weapons. Lyra clung to him, silent now, as if sensing the rhythm of his determination. She had seen something extraordinary in this man. She didn't understand strategy or politics, but she understood bravery, and she felt it radiate from Ethan. From her observation point above, Queen Alara continued to watch. The Vryn hive often saw humans as weak, as prey, but Ethan's actions challenged every assumption. He was not the strongest, nor the fastest, nor the most technologically advanced, but his heart, his courage, his instinct to protect the innocent. These were qualities the Vryn could not measure, and yet they were powerful beyond imagining. Finally, as night fell over Theron 5, the Vryn withdrew. Their ships ascended into the sky, leaving behind smoldering ruins. Ethan stood amidst the devastation, exhausted, burnt, and battered. The settlement had survived, but just barely. He looked down at Lyra. She was dirty, her small frame shaking, but she was alive. And in that moment, Ethan realized something profound. One life saved, one act of bravery could change the course of many. One person standing between fire and innocence could make a difference, even in a galaxy filled with war and darkness. Far above, Alara's gaze lingered. She had not expected this human to survive, and yet here he was, alive, unbroken, and utterly fascinating. A seed of curiosity, of interest, and perhaps something deeper had been planted in her. The human had done something no other species had done. He had earned her attention, and perhaps unknowingly, his fate had shifted forever. Ethan carried Lyra back to the makeshift medical station, where survivors huddled, tending to wounds and losses. The fire still burned in the distance, but for the first time there was a spark of hope. He had stood between the flames and a child, and that single act had saved a life, inspired courage, and drawn the attention of a being far beyond human comprehension. He did not yet know what the future held. The Vryn would return stronger and more organized, but Ethan Rayne did not fear the future. He had seen what courage could accomplish. He had stood in fire, and he had won, if only for a moment. And somewhere in the darkness above, a queen watched, intrigued by the human who dared to stand against death for the sake of another. Alara's interest would not fail. The night sky over Theron 5 was painted with streaks of red and gold as the Vryn ships ascended. Smoke still rose from the ruined colony, and the humans who had survived huddled in small groups, their faces pale with fear and exhaustion. But Ethan Rayne was not among them. He had been captured during the chaos, dragged onto a Vryn ship by towering alien soldiers. The interior of the ship was unlike anything Ethan had ever seen. It pulsed with an organic rhythm, as if the vessel itself were alive. Walls shifted slightly, breathing almost, and the air carried a faint metallic scent mixed with warmth. The ship was immense, far larger than any human vessel, and it was clear that this was not a machine in the sense humans understood. It was a living construct, molded and maintained by the Vryn hive. Ethan struggled against his bindings, but the restraints were surprisingly light. They were not meant to hurt him. They were meant to contain his movement without harming him. His sharp eyes took in every detail, from the faint glow of the walls to the shadows of alien guards moving silently around him. Finally, he was brought before the heart of the ship, a grand chamber that radiated authority and power. There, seated on a throne-like structure carved from living matter, was Queen Alara. She was taller than any human by several meters, her skin iridescent, shifting colors depending on the angle of the light. Her eyes glowed faintly like molten gold, and her presence commanded attention without a word. Ethan dropped to one knee instinctively. He had faced human leaders, military commanders, even hostile aliens before, but none had the aura of control, wisdom, and sheer power that Alara radiated. "You are brave," Alara said in a voice that resonated in the chamber, deep and melodic. Ethan realized she spoke in perfect human language, though her voice carried a musical undertone unlike anything he had heard. "I do what I must," Ethan replied, keeping his tone even. He would not show fear, not here, not now. Lyra's face flashed in his mind, her small hands reaching for him in the fire. He had saved her, and he would survive this for her sake too. Ilara studied him, tilting her head slightly. Most humans would flee, scream, or fight without thought. Yet you ran into the flames. You risked yourself for a child. Explain this behavior. Ethan considered his answer. Because someone had to. Because leaving her meant she would die. I couldn't. I wouldn't. The Queen's gaze lingered on him longer than necessary. Her interest was evident, though he could not yet understand why. To the Vryn, life was measured differently, calculated in usefulness, strength, and loyalty to the hive. But Ethan's actions were purely instinctual, human, and unmeasurable by Vryn logic. Your species is curious, Alara said. You possess traits my hive cannot calculate. Courage, compassion, a willingness to act for others, even at risk to yourself. Ethan frowned. Most humans would do the same if they could. I'm no different. Perhaps, she replied, but you stand out. And that is important. She paused, her glowing eyes narrowing. You may live, but your life is no longer your own. Ethan's mind raced. He had expected imprisonment, interrogation, perhaps even execution. But this was something different. Her words carried weight, not as a threat, but as a choice. You will serve as my champion, Ilara continued. Or you will die slowly, and your species will not witness the benefit of your existence. Decide. He weighed his options carefully. Death would be certain if he refused. Serving her could give him the chance to save Lyra, to protect his people, and perhaps even understand this alien civilization better. I will serve, he said finally, his voice steady. For her. For my people. Ilara's posture relaxed slightly, almost imperceptibly. She extended a hand and a faint energy pulsed from her skin. Ethan could feel it, not physically, but in the air around him, warm and compelling. Good, she said. Your trials will begin soon. Know this, to serve me is to walk a path of challenges. You will face tests of strength, mind, and morality. Your success will determine your place in my court and perhaps beyond. Ethan nodded. He did not fully understand what she meant, but he had faced impossible odds before. He would face them again. The Queen rose, her movement smooth and commanding. She walked toward him, each step resonating in the chamber. You are not just a soldier, she said. You are a human. And humans are unpredictable. That makes you dangerous. That makes you valuable. Ethan's eyes narrowed. Dangerous? I'm just trying to survive. Ilara's lips curved into a hint of a smile, something almost human in expression. Survival is a form of courage. And courage is rare. I will test you, Ethan Rain, to see if your courage can be molded into something greater. The chamber shifted suddenly, the walls pulsing as if responding to her will. Ethan instinctively stepped back, but he did not falter. This ship, this queen, this alien court, it was unlike anything he had faced, yet his resolve did not weaken. You will not be alone, she continued. Some will help you. Others may try to harm you. Trust your instincts, human. Your species has survived against impossible odds because of them. Ethan's mind raced with questions. Help him from whom? Harm from whom? The hive was vast, filled with millions of beings who followed her commands. Who could be trusted? But he did not speak these thoughts aloud. He would observe first. He would learn. That was how he survived. That was how he protected those he cared for. Ilara's gaze softened briefly as she studied him. Do not misunderstand, she said. I am not granting you this life out of mercy. I am granting you it because you intrigue me, because humans are remarkable, and you, Ethan Rain, are the embodiment of that remarkability. Ethan met her gaze steadily. I didn't do anything remarkable. I saved a child. The Queen's smile widened just slightly. Saving a child, and standing between fire and death, is remarkable. Few would do what you did. Fewer still would survive. That survival is what draws my attention. For the first time, Ethan felt the weight of her words. He was no longer just a soldier on a distant planet. He was now part of something far larger, far more complex. The Queen had noticed him, and that notice changed everything. Then, as if sensing his thoughts, Ilara stepped closer. The chamber seemed to hum with her presence, her aura filling the space. Understand this, human, she said softly. Your choices now will shape not just your life, but perhaps the destiny of many, both human and Vryn. Will you rise to that challenge? Ethan swallowed hard, the enormity of her words sinking in. He could not yet grasp the full scope of what she implied, but he knew one thing. He would not falter. He had faced fire. He had saved life when all odds were against him. Whatever trials awaited, he would endure them. He would rise. Elara turned then, signaling the guards to release him from his restraints. Rest now if you can, she said. Your trials begin at dawn. But remember, human, courage is not enough. You will need heart, mind, and soul. And through it all I will watch. You are mine now in ways you do not yet understand. Ethan flexed his sore muscles as he stood, rubbing at the cuts and bruises he had gained during capture. He nodded once. I understand, he said, though he knew he only understood a fraction of what she meant. As he was led to his quarters, a room alive with subtle motion, walls that seemed to breathe, a ceiling that shimmered like a living sky, he thought of Lyra. She was alive because of him, and he would not fail her. The trials, the queen, the alien court, none of it mattered as much as protecting her, guiding the humans who depended on him, and proving that courage and compassion could overcome even the most alien of worlds. Outside his quarters, the vastness of the ship seemed endless. Lights pulsed like stars within its structure, corridors twisted and shifted in impossible ways. Ethan could feel the intelligence of the ship, aware of his presence, responding subtly to his movements. It was unsettling, but he had faced uncertainty before. This was just another challenge, another test of the human spirit. As he lay down on a cot, exhaustion finally overtaking him, he thought again of the fire, of the child he had saved, and of the queen who now claimed a stake in his fate. For the first time he allowed himself a single quiet thought. Perhaps humans were more than survivalists. Perhaps in the eyes of the universe, courage, compassion, and instinct could shine brighter than any technology, stronger than any weapon, and fiercer than any alien force. And somewhere, high above the planet, Queen Elara watched, her curiosity deepening, her fascination with humanity and with Ethan growing. The trials would begin at dawn. The path would be dangerous, uncertain, and filled with choices that would test every part of him. But she knew one thing already. This human was unlike any other she had encountered, and she intended to see how far his uniqueness could reach. The dawn light filtered through the living walls of the Vryn ship, shimmering like liquid gold. Captain Ethan Rain stood at the entrance to the grand training chamber, his hands clasped behind his back. The chamber was enormous, with ceilings that arched like the inside of a cathedral, and walls that pulsed gently, alive with the ship's heartbeat. Alien symbols glowed faintly on the floor, and the air carried a subtle hum of power. This was not a place designed merely to train. It was a place to test, to shape, and perhaps even to judge. Queen Elara stood at the far end of the chamber, her form tall and radiant, eyes glowing with a golden intensity. She did not speak at first. She simply watched Ethan, observing his posture, his breathing, the steadiness in his gaze. To the Vryn, observation was a form of understanding, and in this silence Ethan could feel the weight of her attention pressing against him like gravity. You will face 3 trials, Elara finally said, her voice echoing in the chamber. The first will test your body, the second your mind, and the third your heart. Each is designed to measure what makes humans unusual, what makes you valuable. Do not underestimate them, Ethan nodded. He had faced impossible odds before, but this was different. This was not a battlefield in which he knew the rules. This was a test of everything about him: his courage, his intelligence, and his humanity itself. Alara gestured, and the floor of the chamber split open, revealing a vast pit filled with twisting metal, jagged rocks, and shifting platforms. From the shadows, creatures began to emerge. Xylar beasts, predator-like aliens that combined speed, strength, and intelligence. Their eyes glowed red, and their movements were sharp and deliberate. The first trial, Alara said, is survival. Ethan's muscles tensed. He had faced dangerous creatures before, but these were unlike anything he had encountered. He did not hesitate. He surveyed the environment quickly, noting unstable platforms, possible escape routes, and the creatures' initial positions. Humans were slow compared to these predators, but humans had something they often underestimated: ingenuity. He leapt onto the nearest platform, feeling it shift beneath his weight. One of the Xylar lunged at him, claws extended. Instinctively, he twisted and used his momentum to swing the creature past him, allowing it to crash into a metal beam. He moved quickly, keeping his body low, listening to the sound of the Xylar's movement, anticipating their attacks. As he progressed, he began to notice patterns in their behavior. The creatures attacked in pairs, coordinating silently, but their pattern was predictable if one paid attention. Ethan used this knowledge to outmaneuver them, leading them into collisions with the environment or each other. By the time he reached the opposite edge of the pit, he had neutralized the last Xylar without sustaining a serious injury. Queen Alara's golden eyes glimmered in approval. "Your body is strong," she said. "Your reflexes are adequate. But strength alone is not enough. You have passed the first trial, but the next will test your mind." The chamber shifted again. Walls moved, revealing a maze-like structure filled with complex mechanisms, levers, and alien puzzles. Symbols glowed along the walls in a language Ethan could not read, but patterns began to emerge. This was a test of intellect, observation, and problem-solving, a test designed to frustrate and confuse. Ethan approached the first puzzle, a series of rotating panels that had to align to unlock the path forward. He studied the symbols and noticed subtle variations in their angles. With careful movements, he rotated the panels, aligning them so that light reflected correctly, opening the next passage. The maze became more complex. He encountered walls that shifted when he touched them, doors that responded to sound, and chambers filled with strange energy fields that could knock him unconscious if handled incorrectly. Yet with patience and observation, he learned to adapt. He tapped into a fundamental human skill, curiosity and persistence, and began to anticipate the logic behind the alien designs. Hours passed, and fatigue began to weigh on him. But Ethan pressed on, driven by memory of Lyra and the humans counting on him. He could not fail, not here, not now. The final puzzle of the maze required him to make a choice, a lever that would save one of two groups trapped in separate chambers, each filled with dangers. Both choices seemed equally vital. Ethan closed his eyes briefly, thinking of what the Queen had said. The third trial will test your heart. Perhaps the first choice was already a measure of that. He knew what he had to do. With careful calculation, he pulled the lever to save the group in the chamber that seemed most vulnerable, knowing he could not save both. He moved quickly to rescue them, neutralizing the hazards as best he could. The chamber shifted once again, opening into a serene space, a stark contrast to the chaos he had endured. Soft light filled the room, and at its center stood Alara, her gaze fixed on him. "The third trial," she said, "is your heart." Ethan's brow furrowed. He had faced danger, solved puzzles, and protected others, but what could this trial be? Alara extended a hand, and a small sphere of light appeared, floating between them. Inside, Ethan saw visions. The colony world under attack, children running through smoke, humans struggling to survive. He saw Lyra, alone and frightened, reaching out to him, and he saw possible futures, some where he saved lives, some where he failed, and countless others filled with uncertainty. "You will make choices," Alara said softly. "Not all can be right, but you must act. Compassion, empathy, and courage, these are your true weapons. Use them wisely, for your actions will ripple across many lives." Ethan took a deep breath. He understood now. The first two trials tested his strength and intellect. This final trial tested what made humans truly remarkable, the ability to act for the good of others, even at great personal cost. He reached out and touched the sphere. Instantly, he was immersed in visions of suffering, of danger, of lives hanging by a thread. And yet he also saw hope, glimmers of courage in humans, flashes of bravery that could turn the tide of despair. He felt the weight of responsibility pressing against him, but he did not falter. Ethan acted decisively, making choices that prioritized life, safety, and compassion. Some paths required him to risk his own safety. Some required him to leave behind opportunities for advantage. Each decision weighed heavily, but each was guided by instinct, empathy, and courage, the same qualities that had drawn Alara's attention in the first place. When the visions faded, Ethan collapsed to one knee, exhausted. The chamber was silent, save for the pulsing of the ship itself. He had faced fire, intellect, and heart. He had survived trials that no human had endured before, and he had done so without abandoning his principles. Alara approached him, her steps quiet but commanding. "You have passed," she said. Her golden eyes glimmered with approval and curiosity. "Your courage is remarkable, your mind sharp, and your heart uniquely human. Few in my hive would act as you have. You are extraordinary." Ethan straightened, though fatigue weighed heavily on him. "I did what I had to," he said simply. "That's all any human could do." Alara's gaze softened almost imperceptibly. "It is more than that. You have proven that humans, though fragile in body, possess strengths beyond measure, strength that cannot be calculated, cannot be commanded, cannot be controlled. You are remarkable, and you are mine to guide, to shape, and perhaps to trust." Ethan met her gaze steadily. He did not fully understand what she meant, but he realized that he had earned something rare, respect. And more than that, he had demonstrated that human courage and compassion could stand against forces far beyond their understanding. "Rest now," Alara said. "Tomorrow the trials will continue, but for now you have shown that humans are capable of greatness. Remember this, courage and heart are as powerful as strength and intellect. And in the days to come, you will need all of these to survive and to protect what matters." Ethan nodded, feeling a sense of quiet pride mixed with determination. He had faced challenges no human had ever faced, yet he had endured. He had acted with courage, thought with clarity, and led with heart. And in doing so, he had begun to prove what humans were truly capable of, even to an alien queen who had once regarded them as unpredictable and weak. As he was led to his quarters, his mind raced with questions about what lay ahead. The hive was vast, the queen powerful, and the challenges endless. Yet he felt a quiet certainty. Whatever trials awaited, humans had a strength that could not be measured, a spark that could not be extinguished. The Vryn hive was vast, stretching across a region of space so wide that it took hours to traverse even in their fastest ships. Yet within this hive, a threat had grown, a rogue faction of Vryn warriors who sought to overthrow Queen Alara. They believed her fascination with humans was a weakness, a betrayal of the hive's strength and unity. Their forces had already attacked several hive stations, leaving destruction in their wake. Ethan Rain stood on the bridge of Alara's living ship, watching the stars streak past as they approached the rogue faction's stronghold. He had spent the last few days learning the hive's strategies, studying their ships and understanding their strengths and weaknesses. His trials had tested his body, mind, and heart, but now it was time to apply everything he had learned in a real conflict. Alara approached, her massive presence commanding the room. "These rogues believe they can challenge the hive," she said. "They underestimate humans, and yet you will help me teach them a lesson." Ethan straightened. "Then we stop them. We protect the hive and my people. I won't fail." Alara's eyes glimmered. "You already have not failed. That is why you are here. Your humanity, your unpredictability will be our advantage." The first stage of their plan was reconnaissance. Ethan led a small squad of elite Vryn soldiers aboard sleek scout ships. He analyzed every signal, every patrol route, and every possible weak point in the rogue faction's defenses. He noticed details the Vryn had overlooked, small gaps in their formations, predictable timing in their patrols, and signs of internal conflict among their warriors. "This is why humans survive," Ethan murmured to himself. "We notice what others ignore. We adapt." The scout mission revealed the enemy's central hub, a massive asteroid fortress heavily armed and shielded. A frontal assault would be suicide even for the Queen's fleet. But Ethan had an idea. Using a combination of stealth, timing, and decoys, he proposed a plan that the Vryn generals initially resisted. "It is too risky," one of them said. "We cannot predict the outcome." Ethan shook his head. "Predictable tactics fail against unpredictable opponents, trust me. We can turn their strength against them." Queen Alara observed silently, her golden eyes sharp and calculating. After a moment, she nodded. "Do it your way, human. Prove that your species is worthy of trust." The battle began at dawn, the stars reflecting off the sleek armor of Vryn ships as they approached the rogue fortress. Ethan's plan was simple yet brilliant. Use a small strike team to infiltrate the fortress while the Queen's main fleet engaged the enemy from a distance, drawing attention away. Ethan led his team in a stealth approach, weaving between asteroids and using the rogue faction's communication patterns against them. Every move was calculated, but every moment required courage. One misstep could alert the enemy and doom them all. Yet Ethan moved with confidence, knowing that human adaptability often thrived in uncertainty. Inside the fortress, they encountered resistance. Rogue Vryn warriors attacked with precision and ferocity, but Ethan's team was prepared. Using alien technology in ways the Vryn had not anticipated, they created diversions, disabled weapons, and outmaneuvered their opponents. Ethan's leadership inspired not only his team, but also several young Vryn soldiers who began to see him as a figure of respect and guidance. As they reached the central control room, Ethan discovered a rogue commander attempting to initiate a self-destruct sequence. The fortress would explode, killing countless Vryn and destabilizing the hive further. Ethan acted quickly, overriding the system with a combination of Vryn technology and human ingenuity. Sparks flew, panels shifted, and for a moment it seemed impossible, but he succeeded, preventing a catastrophe. Queen Alara's fleet engaged the rogue forces outside, but it was Ethan's small team inside the fortress that turned the tide. When the central hub fell, the rogue warriors lost coordination. Some surrendered, some fled, and some were captured by Alara's forces. The Queen's strategic brilliance combined with Ethan's human adaptability created an outcome neither species could have achieved alone. After the battle, Ethan stood with Alara on the bridge of her ship. The rogue threat had been neutralized, but the hive was far from safe. Alara's gaze lingered on him, her tone thoughtful. "You have done what no Vryn could. You acted with courage, intelligence, and compassion. You understand balance in a way my species rarely does. Humans are remarkable." Ethan nodded, exhausted but proud. "I just did what I thought was right. That's all anyone can do." "Rightness is more than instinct," Alara replied. "It is a choice. And in you, I see the rare ability to make the right choice even when the outcome is uncertain. That is why you are mine, human, and why the hive will follow you." Ethan's mind raced. He understood now that this alliance was not just political or military. It was personal. The Queen trusted him, and in doing so, she had given humanity a role in shaping the destiny of her species. He had earned that trust through courage, ingenuity, and compassion, the very traits that made humans exceptional. Meanwhile, back on Theron 5, survivors of the initial attack received news of Ethan's success. Lyra, now safe and growing braver each day, looked up at the stars with hope. Humans were no longer simply victims of the Vryn, they were allies, leaders, and protectors. And one man who had stood between fire and a child had become a symbol of what humanity could achieve. In the aftermath of the battle, Alara called a council of the hive. Vryn leaders from across the sector gathered, wary and respectful. She spoke of cooperation, strategy, and shared goals, but it was Ethan's presence that captured the attention of the assembly. He addressed the council, his voice calm and assured, explaining plans, highlighting weaknesses, and proposing solutions. The Vryn listened, some with skepticism, others with growing respect. Humans, through Ethan, had proven they could not be ignored. One Vryn elder, skeptical and proud, finally spoke. "Why should we follow a human? They are weak, short-lived, and fragile compared to our hive." Ethan met the elder's gaze steadily. "We may be fragile, but we adapt. We think, we feel, we fight in ways you cannot predict. And when we stand together with those who trust us, we can achieve what no single species can." Alara's eyes gleamed. "Hear him, leaders of the hive. His words are true. Humans are not as you imagine. They are unpredictable, courageous, and resilient. And this human, Ethan Rain, has proven that. By the time the council concluded, a new understanding had formed. Humans were not invaders, not slaves, not tools. They were partners, allies, and warriors in their own right. And Ethan, who had once simply run into fire to save a child, had become a symbol of this new alliance. That night, as the stars shone over the Hive fleet, Ethan stood on the bridge beside Alara. The universe was vast, full of dangers and unknown challenges, yet for the first time, he felt a sense of possibility. Humans and Vryn could cooperate. They could learn from each other. And together they could face threats far beyond any single world. Alara's hand brushed lightly against his arm, a gesture of trust and recognition. "You have changed things," she said softly. "Not just for your species, but for mine. You are mine, human, and I will not let you fail." Ethan looked at her, understanding the weight of her words. He was no longer just a soldier or a protector of a single colony. He was part of something far greater, a movement that could shape the destiny of two species, a bridge between worlds. He thought of Lyra, of the humans still rebuilding on Theron 5, and of the courage that burned in the hearts of ordinary people. He realized that bravery was contagious, that leadership came from action, and that compassion could be just as powerful as any weapon. And somewhere in the vast reaches of the Hive, Queen Alara watched him, intrigued and fascinated, knowing that this human had changed the course of events far beyond his own understanding. The alliance was strong, but it was fragile. The future would test them all. Yet one truth remained: humans were remarkable. And Ethan Rain, who had stood between fire and life, had proven it beyond doubt. As the ship sailed through the stars, Ethan felt a quiet determination settle within him. The rogue threat was gone, but the universe was full of challenges. Yet for the first time he felt ready to face whatever came next, ready to protect those who could not protect themselves, ready to show that humans, no matter how fragile they appeared, could stand shoulder to shoulder with the mightiest of alien civilizations. And as the stars stretched endlessly before them, Ethan knew that courage, ingenuity, and heart were his true weapons, and they would carry him, and perhaps even the galaxy, into a new era. The stars stretched endlessly before them, cold and distant yet full of possibility. Captain Ethan Rain stood on the bridge of Queen Alara's living ship, looking out at the galaxy with a mixture of awe and determination. Months had passed since the fire on Theron 5, since he had risked everything to save Lyra. In that time, he had been tested, challenged, and shaped in ways he could never have imagined. The Vryn Hive had accepted him, humanity had proven its value, and together, they had defeated the rogue faction threatening the Queen's rule. And yet, the journey was far from over. Alara approached silently, her presence towering and commanding. She placed a hand lightly on the edge of the bridge, her golden eyes fixed on him. "The Hive is stable for now," she said, her voice calm yet filled with authority. "But threats remain. Beyond these systems, there are forces that do not understand cooperation, that will see both our species as prey. We must prepare." Ethan nodded. "We will be ready. Humans and Vryn together." We've already proven we can achieve what neither species could alone. The Queen's gaze softened, and for a moment her alien form seemed almost gentle. You have changed more than the hive, Ethan Rain. You have changed me. Humans are remarkable. You have shown me courage, ingenuity, and heart in ways I never anticipated. That is why you are mine, and why I trust you. Ethan felt the weight of her words, and a quiet pride settled in his chest. He had started as a soldier, protecting a single child, and now he had become part of something much greater, a symbol of hope, courage, and humanity itself. Meanwhile, back on Theron 5, the settlement was rebuilding. The survivors worked tirelessly to repair homes, replant crops, and restore basic infrastructure. Lyra, now confident and brave beyond her years, ran through the streets helping others, inspired by the man who had saved her. She had grown attached to the idea that humans, even in the face of impossible odds, could make a difference, and she understood that one person's courage could inspire an entire community. Ethan's team of humans had begun sharing knowledge with the Vryn soldiers who had fought alongside them. Together they taught strategies, shared tactics, and built trust. The bond between the two species strengthened with every shared mission, every victory, and every challenge faced together. Alara's fleet moved systematically across nearby sectors, ensuring the rogue faction had no chance to regroup. Ethan, with his human perspective and creativity, suggested ways to anticipate threats, adapt to alien technology, and coordinate defenses in ways that the Vryn had never considered. His influence grew, not through authority or fear, but through respect, ingenuity, and action. One day, during a quiet moment on the bridge, Alara spoke softly. You have proven that humans are more than survivalists. They are leaders, innovators, and protectors. And you, Ethan, embody all of this. You are mine, yet you belong to many. You shape the fate of the hive and humanity together. Ethan met her gaze steadily. I only did what I could. I wanted to protect life, human or otherwise. That's what matters. The Queen's expression was unreadable, but her eyes glimmered with approval. That is why you are extraordinary. That is why you endure, and why I trust you with more than I trust any other being in the galaxy. News of their victories reached distant human colonies. Stories spread of a soldier who had faced fire to save a child, who had won the trust of an alien queen, and who had helped forge an alliance that ensured survival for two species. Humans began to see themselves differently, not just as survivors, but as explorers, protectors, and partners in a larger cosmic struggle. One evening, as Ethan walked the quiet corridors of the living ship, he paused to look out of a translucent wall. Stars streaked past, countless and infinite. He thought of Lyra, now safe and growing stronger every day. He thought of humanity, small yet unbroken, capable of courage and brilliance. And he thought of Queen Alara, whose trust he had earned, whose guidance he had come to respect, and whose fascination with humans had transformed into partnership. He realized that courage, heart, and ingenuity were not just traits, they were legacies. And humans, despite their fragility, possessed them in abundance. He had proven this not only to the Vryn, but to himself. Alara appeared beside him, silent and imposing. She placed a hand on his shoulder, a gesture that in her species was deeply personal. You have done more than survive, she said. You have inspired, you have led, and you have proven that humans are not weak but extraordinary. That is why I call you mine. Ethan looked at her, understanding the significance of her words. To be hers was not just a claim. It was a recognition, an acknowledgement of his value and his influence, and in return he felt a sense of purpose deeper than anything he had known. Together, they oversaw the rebuilding of Theron 5, ensuring humans had the resources, guidance, and protection needed to thrive. Vryn technology, combined with human ingenuity, created new infrastructure, sustainable systems, and defenses that would safeguard the settlement for generations. Lyra ran up to Ethan one afternoon, holding a small bundle of seedlings she had rescued from the ruins. Captain Rain, she said, smiling brightly, we're going to grow a garden, and we'll be safe now because of you. Ethan knelt, taking the seedlings and smiling. That's right, Lyra. We've survived the fire, and now we'll make life grow stronger. That's what humans do. We protect, we endure, and we build. In the months that followed, humans and Vryn worked together, exploring nearby systems, mapping resources, and establishing communication networks. Where once humans had been prey, now they were partners. Where once the Vryn had viewed them as weak, now they saw humans as valuable allies capable of adapting, thinking, and leading. Ethan often reflected on his journey, the fire, the trials, the battles, and the alliances forged. One act of courage standing between a child and death had changed everything. One human heart, unbroken and unwavering, had reshaped the fate of two species. Elara often observed him quietly, her fascination evolving into admiration and trust. "You are more than I anticipated," she said once. "And now, the galaxy watches, learning what humans are capable of. They will follow you, Ethan, and you will continue to inspire." Ethan nodded. "I only hope that humanity continues to rise to every challenge. That courage, compassion, and ingenuity will guide them, as they have guided me." The stars stretched endlessly before them, vast and unyielding. But for the first time, Ethan did not feel small. Humans were small in size, but not in spirit, and he knew as he looked out at the endless expanse that they could face anything. Together with the Vryn, they had built a future where bravery and heart mattered more than raw strength. And somewhere aboard the living ship, Queen Elara watched, proud of the human who had dared to stand between fire and life. He was hers in ways that mattered, her champion, her advisor, her symbol of what humanity could achieve. Ethan held Lyra's hand as they walked through the newly restored colony, watching humans plant gardens, build homes, and laugh despite the scars of the past. He felt hope in every smile, courage in every step, and pride in every act of resilience. The galaxy was vast and full of dangers yet unseen, but one truth remained. Humans could endure, adapt, and inspire. They were remarkable not because of strength but because of heart. And as long as humans like Ethan Rayne stood in fire, protected life, and acted with courage, there was no force in the universe that could dim their light. A new era had begun. A partnership between human and Vryn had been forged, and the galaxy would never be the same. And for Ethan, one small act, standing between fire and a child, had led to something far greater than survival. It had led to trust, respect, and a place in the universe where courage and compassion mattered above all. He looked to the stars, holding Lyra's hand firmly. Humanity had survived. Humanity had thrived. And humanity would continue to rise stronger and brighter than ever. Somewhere aboard the living starship, Queen Elara watched, her gaze soft and approving. "You are mine," she whispered, "and together we will shape the stars." Ethan smiled faintly, knowing that the story was far from over. But for the first time, he felt certain. Whatever came next, humanity would endure and shine among the stars.